Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen. Cannonball!
She's an attorney, political analyst, and conservative commentator. And most recently, she has been appointed the executive director of USA Strong. Erin, thank you, darling, for joining us. We miss you terribly in person, but it's always good to have you.
Thank you for having me, and I miss you all in person as well, hopefully soon.
Hopefully, yeah. Where in the world is Waldo right now? I know you've been bouncing around.
I'm wearing red, so I do look a little bit like the one and only elusive and illustrious Waldo. I am in Jupiter, Florida, which is near West Palm Beach.
Jupiter, very nice. I love Jupiter. It is a wonderful place. My friend Guillermo is a medalist. I've been there many times. So I know you guys are nonpartisan at USA Strong, but you are committed to making USA strong, and that's what we want to be, the strongest power on earth. And one of the things you guys try to focus on through your advocacy is getting us basically divested from China and bringing more products being made here and stop having a dependency on China. Is that right?
I couldn't agree more. And another thing, you know, I'm also an attorney, and I often dealt with contracts. And I look at us as an attorney for America, if you will. We want to make sure that the United States is entering fair contracts, aka trade deals. So it's really important that the United States is treated fairly, just like anyone that was entering a contract.
Well, it's good to have those extra skills, and it's good to have you as America's attorney, I can tell you that.
That is quite a responsibility. I'm not sure I'm ready to take that on, but it sounds good on paper.
Have 2 Prosecco's and call me in the morning. Don't worry about it. You're going to make it. Erin, so this is so strange, this story, and we've had people on the show over the past 6 months or so that talked about this. I wasn't so sure, you know, how real it was, but TikTok is apparently run by, a U.S. CEO. But there are more and more evidence emerging that TikTok is owned by China. And
let it be clear that TikTok is a spying tool of the Chinese government. Israeli security forces have actually done investigations into TikTok, and they said, and I quote, "It has serious backdoors and major vulnerabilities." Reddit CEO Steve Huffman calls it fundamentally pragmatic app that's always listening. So we really have to be very careful. And by the way, it has had over 2 billion downloads. Here's the problem. The Chinese invented this app, if you will, and they have backdoor spying tools that can get into your mobile device or your home computer, capture your screen and capture other information, and use it to spy on people in the United States. India, in fact, has even banned it for these reasons. So it's a really nefarious app, and everyone should be very careful.
Okay, well, here's what you need to know at home, and I love for our audience to learn stuff in the show too. The TikTok app on your kid's phone that we're all doing these stupid dances and all this other stuff. It's like, the old phrase, giving candy to a baby, right? They're giving candy to the kids, and they're getting in the kid's phone, which gets them in your house. And the Chinese government is essentially building a dossier on every U.S. citizen and global citizen. 2 billion downloads is like a third of the planet that China has every single move that happens to your phone once you make one TikTok video. Right, Erin?
Right, and Pompeo was absolutely right to say they need to look into banning it in the United States. I think the Chinese objective is to infiltrate our culture and our society and gather as much information and data as humanly possible. This should be a concern to every American citizen. Perhaps some of these wonderful technological minds over in Northern California should start developing their own applications that are based here domestically. Not only would it create jobs, it would stimulate the economy and also prevent us from being spied on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by the Communist Chinese Party.
So, let's think about this, folks. They get in your kids' phones and in your phone, because I got TikTok on my phone because my kids put videos on it. I want to watch them. They get in your phone, then they get in your home computer. They probably could access your alarm system and all that other stuff, okay?
Banking information, your documents that you're typing up.
Your passwords, your bank accounts, your logins, all that other good stuff, right?
I think it's very dangerous.
We could all wake up one day and find out that every person in America with TikTok on their phone has no bank account, right? I mean, effectively.
I think that's a true possibility and a real threat.
Right.
I know certain members of the United States military are not allowed to have TikTok downloaded, and Forbes actually wrote a really great article. If you just Google TikTok and Forbes, they are, not always in favor of a lot of conservative thought. And they say, summarizing here, it may be a lot of fun, but weigh the fun and weigh the danger. The danger is far outweighing any sort of positive impact that we're having here. This is an absolute threat, and every American should start really researching it and looking into it immediately.
Okay.
My advice, get TikTok off of your phone now.
And also, in the U.S. military, anyone that has a U.S. military issued phone, they're not allowed to download TikTok on it. That I know. I had a defense expert on months ago, and U.S. military has asked soldiers to not download it on their phone. So they must know something. And by the way, the last thing we need China knowing is where all our soldiers are by virtue of where their phone is. They can figure out where people are being deployed, where people are training. They can figure out where a combat unit is. And there's a lot of really serious crap here. Aaron, I just wanted to point out to our viewers, China also owns the Radisson Hotel Group, so they own the whole Radisson hotel chain. Okay, I found this out in some other investigating I've been doing. So
yes.
If you got TikTok on your phone and then you've been to a Radisson, when you check into a Radisson, there's cameras everywhere. You give them your credit card, then you go in the room. There's all kinds of ways they could, spy on you in your room. So beware of Radisson hotels. And by the way, this Huawei company is installing this 5G network. And, back in the Obama days, they made an agreement to have the Huawei put their 5G networks in our rural areas. So they're actually controlling the airwaves and the phones at the same time.
Well, it goes much further than that. I'm going to read you a line. Between 2002 and 2016, Chinese state-owned or state-linked companies acquired more than 120 billion of assets in 40 states across the United States. So they own pieces of companies like Reddit, which I just referenced earlier, obviously TikTok, Universal Music, and the list goes on and on and on. That's a significant investment. They're not investing in the United States of America out of altruistic purposes or love for our culture. It's out of an interest in destroying us. Do not be naive here. This is not simply a business play.
Got it.
This is a huge power play.
All right, Aaron, so I want to get to this other topic, too, because this is, to me, a big one, and it's a good one. More evidence Trump say we're backing out of the WHO. They definitely were China's shill. In our final couple of minutes here, tell us, give us some background on what's happening. We're getting out of the WHO. I agree. I
briefly spoke earlier about these trade deals / contracts. America needs to be treated fairly, and we're not. Essentially, the World Health Organization is a pawn of the Chinese Communist Party. They essentially, whenever this whole pandemic broke out, they just were a mouthpiece for China. China was denying human-to-human transmission for a significant period of time, and the World Health Organization was simply lauding and praising China for their efforts to contain the virus, when we know, in fact, they were actually helping to spread it. And now we have 11.5 million people worldwide that have died. Both the WHO and the Chinese Communist Party have serious blood on their hands. And let me read you this statistic as well. In the WHO's budget, only 4% goes to medical supplies, whereas 8% to air travel and 40% goes to salaries and perks. They are not an altruistic organization that is here to make the world safer. And by the way, if you want the number, the Chinese Communist Party gives them $450 million every year, while the United States just gives $43 million. There is no sense in us being in this organization whatsoever. They do not even recognize Taiwan as an independent nation, and Taiwan has done a great job containing the coronavirus in their nation, and they had also gone into China and were raising some red flags very early on. But anyone within the WHO was told basically, don't even mention the word Taiwan. They don't exist. They're a figment of your imagination.
Wow.
This organization is pure, unadulterated evil.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there. It's pure, unadulterated fun and great, tremendous information anytime we have on Aaron Elmore. Aaron, thank you so much, doll. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
I really hope so, too. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a great day. You stay right there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back right after this with a little investigative reporting from Zen Sam's right here on Liquid Lunch. Back after this.
5, 4, 3, 2... the arugula pie, white arugula pie with fresh grated Parmesan. This is the margarita pie, it's beautiful.
All righty, you know what this means. Hello, it's time to shake it up. I'm mixing one up right here because I'm gonna sit back and relax because I know my next guest is gonna just light this place on fire, and I'm gonna just sit here and go with it. But anyway, Zen Sams is with us every Wednesday. She does double duty other times. She's a great friend of mine and Frankie's and the show. She's an actress and a model, but many times when we were downtown and there were all these high-profile cases going on over at the courthouse there, Zen was doing some investigative reporting for us as well, and reported on the Epstein case, on the all the Steins, Weinstein, Epstein, and going back to January, there was a case that got a lot of public attention where Cy Vance, the DA here in New York, was refusing to prosecute and then gave a sweetheart deal to one of his donors. The public advocate got involved. 20 women alleged that this Colombian doctor molested them, harassed them, assaulted them, and Cy Vance didn't want to prosecute him. And Zen brought this to our attention way back then, and now, as Zen and I and others are starting to talk about defund the DA's office, we take a closer look at what's been going on there. Zen, defund the DA sounds a lot smarter to me than defund NYPD.
Yeah, we were onto something, John, and there's a huge problem, and we found it. It's the district attorney and the corruption behind the scenes that people are just sweeping under the rug. The Marshall Project examined the record of Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance Jr., the person we are talking about right now, and found that despite his progressive reputation, he has punished the poor and minorities disproportionately more than any other New York borough. Okay, so we hear the media tell it like he's a soft. We hear the media say it over and over again that he's soft on white collar crime. So first came the news that an attorney for Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump Jr. had arranged a fundraiser for Vance after he refused to prosecute them for fraud. Then there was Vance's decision not to file sexual assault charges against Harvey Weinstein, and you know how I feel about that, right? That Harvey Weinstein case just literally put a battery in my back. And even though the police had caught him, Harvey Weinstein on tape confessing to the crime, Vance swept it under the rug. Recently, spurred by a story in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo ordered the state attorney general to investigate Vance's handling of a very specific case. And these incidences have cost the district attorney a lot. So during his basically uncontested election for a third term in November, 10% of voters were so fed up with him that they went to the trouble of writing somebody else's name in the ballot, and it wasn't Cy Vance. They were so fed up. But all the attention on Vance's treatment of the rich and powerful has obscured a more surprising aspect of his record. This DA, who styles himself as a progressive reformer, is actually far more punitive toward poor and minority defendants than counterparts in other boroughs. And according to a report issued last year by the Special Commission on Rikers Island, Vance's office was responsible for almost 38% of the city's jail population in 2016, even though it handled just 29% of all criminal cases in New York. No other borough comes close. Brooklyn, despite having more than having a million more residents than Manhattan, accounted for only 22% of those behind bars. So, and like you mentioned at the beginning, that story that went off the grid in 2016 with this gynecologist, we had public advocate Jumaane Williams, and has rallied in the past right outside of Vance's office to demand resignation. And one extremely troubling case was what you mentioned, where a woman basically, and specifically on Women Wednesday, and it takes my breath away, this kicks in, he mishandled sexual assault charges against the Columbia University gynecologist. So Dr. Robin Hayden got no jail time under a 2016 plea deal negotiated by Vance's office, despite being accused of sexual assault by 20 women, some of who were pregnant at the time. This is mind-boggling. And Hayden's case drew renowned attention from Evelyn Yang, and we spoke about this yesterday, the wife of presidential hopeful Andrew Yang, and she went public as one of the doctor's patients sharing her story of alleged sexual assault. So that is the latest in a brazen pattern of preferential treatment to rich and powerful white men at the expense of victims that they abused. So this is completely making my blood boil. And we have a lot of stuff on, on Vance right now. He's not going to get, he's not coming in again for a fourth term. He's barely been able to scrape together $30,000 for his reelection. So
now, I know you've been doing a lot of research on the whole office there. And I have been reading up on some of the stuff and talking to you about what results you're finding and stuff. And it turns out that there are other instances when we talk about defunding the police, the DA's office is wasting and squandering millions and millions of dollars creating cases that shouldn't even be cases. And then time after time, it's found that they can't come up with the evidence, they can't meet the requirements, and these cases are thrown out. And some of the members of the DA's office who got caught on this stuff have left recently.
Yeah. Yes. So somebody who just left, and a very important person. So Diana Florence, the longtime head of Vance's construction fraud task force, recently resigned after allegations surfaced that she deliberately withheld damaging information about her star witness in a multi-defendant construction bribery case. So to clarify, she is the assistant district attorney, and she wrote in her January 21 resignation letter, which was obtained by the city, and I quote, "Because of the events over the past year, I am no longer convinced that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is a place that values obtaining justice for all New Yorkers above all else." And in 2019 alone, now I'm not defending her, but let's stay true to Women Wednesday, right? Keep with me for Diana Florence. In 2019 alone, she recovered $4.3 million in stolen wages and restitution to taxpayers. Okay. And she was the lead prosecutor who won manslaughter convictions against contractors in the 2015 case of a 22-year-old Carlos Moncayo, an undocumented worker who was buried alive on a site in Manhattan. And the case became a flashpoint for workers' safety in the construction industry. So she did pave the way, and her service to the district attorney's office was of value. But yes, currently right now, there's so much corruption that even Diana Florence is stepping away because she's also being investigated. So, you look left, you look right, you look at the police being defunded. But John, you're right. I mean, I think the attention needs to be, at the district attorney level where, when you're talking about defunding the police force, and these are the soldiers on the ground that protect us,
right?
Women.
Now, the people that are really, using all kinds of underhanded and sometimes illegal tactics, withholding evidence and stuff, the prosecutors who break the law are worse than any criminal, if you ask me, because we're supposed to hold them to a higher standard. And can you reach out to this Diana Florence, see if maybe, she wants to give you a statement? Will you? Have you? What's happening there?
I'm gonna try, because look, I haven't investigated Diana Florence too much, and I'm by no means an investigative reporter, but it's very interesting to me because from a woman's perspective, when the safety, and we're talking about specifically New York City, when my safety is compromised and I no longer feel safe in my city and I have to flee and go to New Jersey or wherever I'm looking to buy a home right now, and when I don't feel safe strolling my daughter down the street, then that's a problem. So yeah, I'm looking under the hood because the people that are responsible for this are not directly the police officers on the front.
It's the prosecutors. All right, Zen, I'm sorry, we got to go. You are the bomb, and keep investigating that for us some more. We'll take a quick break.
Oh.
Welcome back. I'm going to try to do this segment. There's a lot of things flying around right now with Liquid Lunch, and there's people that want me to get out of the studio. There's other people that want me to go back to the studio in New York. There are a lot of opportunities, and a bunch of different networks are actually watching Johnny T and seeing if I fit the bill. They're saying I'm not like your traditional guy, which I'm not, but I'm going to try for this segment to play it straight and be like a regular newsman. So, all right, welcome back. It's just past the top of the hour here in New York, coming to you live from the Corona Bunker Studios. Lots of things going on around the world today, and we need as many independent investigative journalists as we can get, as the media seems to be hijacked by the left. Joining us right now is Dylan Howard, who is just that, an investigative journalist. He's also the author of Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Spies, Lies, and Blackmail. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us on Liquid Lunch today.
Thank you, John. I do like the bipolar attitude of John and then News John.
Yeah.
Whichever way you want to go, I'm happy to play the role.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Dylan. And to go with my professionalism, I will be having a martini while we peruse these topics here. But go out, please, and check out Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales for Dylan. Buy the book, check it out. And also, you were talking, and I know you've been investigating for quite some time, the whole Ghislaine Maxwell. And, many people are confused even by the pronunciation of her name, on top of all the news coming out about her. Can you clear the air for us?
Well, in terms of the pronunciation of her name, some people will say it's Ghislaine, others will say Ghislaine. One thing's for certain, we will find out on Friday when she makes her first appearance in court, which is going to be a very critical hearing because it's going to provide John insight into what has taken place since she was moved from New Hampshire to the Brooklyn Correctional Facility Center. Now, typically in a law enforcement investigation like this, she would be put in a cell and either her defense counsel or her would agree to cooperate with the prosecutors and potentially become whistleblower, which would make a number of individuals very, very nervous. But sources close to Ghislaine tell me that she's unlikely to do that. She's unlikely to want to tell all about Prince Andrew and others. But the reality of the situation is if she wants to reduce sentence by cooperating, you don't get to pick and choose who you tell on. You don't get to cherry pick. So we don't know if Ghislaine Maxwell is singing like a canary. The other option that she has is to defend the case. But what we do know from the Southern District of New York is they've likely built up a very compelling case, which makes it almost impossible for Ghislaine Maxwell to be able to defend it. The Southern District notoriously doesn't pursue cases in a court of law unless the indictment is unimpeachable. And then, of course, she might plead to lesser counts, but still serve jail time and attempt to try and reduce the 35 years jail sentence that she is currently facing. So Friday's hearing is critical, not only to determine if she's Ghislaine or Ghislaine, but also whether she's going to defend.
So we continue with Dylan Howard. He's one of the most feared journalists in Hollywood. Today he happens to be in the Hamptons with the limousine liberal crowd. But he is one of the greatest investigative reporters around. He's cracked open scandals that brought down Mel Gibson, Charlie Sheen, Hulk Hogan, Paul Dean. What can you tell us from your investigating of this that's gone on? I mean, she, there are all these things out there that, her father was a Mossad agent, that her two sisters are intelligence or were intelligence agents. Is there any truth behind this rumor that she may have been cooperating for quite some time?
I don't know if she's been cooperating with the federal government. It would seem unlikely. There is a theory out there that she might well have been in the witness protection program and cooperating with the feds, providing information about others that could be charged, and that's why it took 12 months. But that conspiracy theory in itself is simply knocked down by the fact that a grand jury sat and confirmed the 6-count indictment against her. Now, with regards to her intelligence connections, it was indeed Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales, the book, that blew the lid off the connections between Israel intelligence, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and this, of course, dates back to her late father, the British media tycoon who once owned the New York Daily News, who was killed mysteriously off the back of his yacht, believed murdered. He was working for Israelis Mossad. Now, that has been confirmed by his spy handler. So there is an interesting geopolitical element to this story that is going to make it even more interesting in terms of Ghislaine's prosecution.
So, Dylan, let me ask you this. We just had on Zen Sams, who's done some investigative reporting for us in the past during the Epstein-Weinstein days on the New York City DA's office. And Cy Vance here in New York tends to go a little softer on those who have donated to his different political campaigns. Can you see Ghislaine getting a sort of free pass here with all the corruption in the New York City DA's office?
Well, there's a difference between the New York City's DA's office and who is prosecuting this crime. This is being prosecuted by the Southern District of New York, which is the federal branch of the Department of Justice, an organization that is notoriously tough on crime. And Bill Barr has already said unambiguously that they intended to hold alleged co-conspirators to account for their role in the Epstein sex trafficking network. Let me explain a little bit about how I believe the SDNY got to this position to indict her. They were able to turn, in my view, a number of alleged co-conspirators, hypothetically housemaids, pilots, drivers, staff of Jeffrey Epstein, who knew what took place but never reported it to police. By threatening them with potential prosecution, they were able to get a corroborating witness and probably and most likely entered into an immunity or non-prosecution agreement with those alleged co-conspirators to provide evidence against Ghislaine Maxwell. And when she makes that appearance in court on Friday, if she hasn't agreed to cooperate, then the Southern District of New York will lay out in finite detail just how comprehensive and compelling their case is.
Understood. So, will you? You're a great author. Again, we're speaking with Dylan Howard. He's an investigative journalist, one of the most feared journalists in Hollywood. He's also the author of Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Spies, Lies, and Blackmail. This sounds like a real Hollywood drama almost, with all of the stuff behind Ghislaine Maxwell. Do you think Ghislaine Maxwell killed herself?
Well, she's killed herself in terms of her crimes. She remains alive in Brooklyn. I don't think she's going to see the light of day anytime soon.
Yeah, I was joking. You know, many people are. Many people.
The allegation about whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was off as a result of his intelligence connections remains a viable question. Now, I don't feed into the theory that he was executed at the behest of someone.
Oh, no, he was.
I certainly do believe that he was given the means and opportunity to commit suicide. He was a man who was staring at life in prison. He was going to rot in hell. And he'd been released back in the prison population some 2 weeks after an attempted suicide attempt. Now, that just doesn't happen in correctional facilities, nor are you afforded linens, appliances with electrical cords, and medication. It was almost like he was given a buffet of ways in which to kill himself, a smorgasbord, if you like. And so I believe that Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide, but was aided and abetted in that process.
Well, you and I will agree to disagree, because I believe the Clinton cartel had a hand in his offing. But you may be right.
Oh,
I did have the head. I did have the head.
Is there for that?
I did have the head psychologist from the MCC on my show, and he said that those type of prisoners are not provided with the type of sheets that you can hang yourself with. So
you think the Clinton establishment killed Jeffrey Epstein? Is that what you're saying?
I think somewhere in there they had a hand in the moving of the guards and the non-recordings on the floor that he was on. And I think you're right that they gave him all the means and opportunity and said, do it or else.
But why would the Clintons be behind that?
Well, because I think Bill Clinton's right up there with had the most trips, on his flights, and I think that that could open a can of worms that could take down a former president. So I think it's pretty serious.
There is no doubt that Bill Clinton has not been forthcoming with the actual truth about his.
Hey Dylan, listen, we got to take a quick break here. Can you hang around for a minute? We'll talk a little more in the next segment. All right, we're going to take a quick break right here. This is great stuff. More with Dylan Howard right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, folks.
I've been taking my makeup off every day with the
Coronavirus wipes as a work
I'm still corona free.
Didn't even wipe your fake tan off.
Well, that's because that's not a fake tan. That's a real thing.
For more Liquid Lunch, head over to YouTube, do a search for Liquid Lunch TV, and hit that subscribe button.
Alrighty, welcome back. We are just past the bottom of the hour here in New York. I'm John Tobacco reporting to you from the Corona Bunker Studios. And we are joined again by Dylan Howard, one of the most feared reporters in Hollywood, investigative journalist and author of Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Now, Dylan, in the last segment, you and I had a little bit of a disagreement about my thoughts on the Clinton cartel and their, in my view, participation in the death of Jeffrey Epstein. You don't think the Clintons have that much of a thirst for blood, do you?
Let me ask you this question, John. What proof do you have?
Absolutely none.
Absolutely none. So herein lies the issue with the media at the moment. It is split down ideological lines. You have the left and the right that have become radically weaponized, and both will do anything in order to get the president elected or the president not elected.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of rhetoric which comes from keyboard warriors about the Clintons being bloodthirsty killers and responsible for Jeffrey Epstein's death only helps feed that narrative. And there
that is one of my goals.
There is zero proof to suggest that the Clintons had any involvement. What I will tell you is fact. Bill Clinton has sought to minimize his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on the so-called Lolita Express far many times than he's ever copped to, and the closeness between him and Jeffrey Epstein was significant. Now, in their friendship, at the time, Hillary Clinton was a member of the Senate. So it's almost certain that they weren't talking about the Jets or the Giants and who was winning or losing in the NFL. They were talking about issues of international diplomacy, which Epstein traded in with foreign intelligence, such as the Israelis, Saudis, and Russians. So I think therein lies the connection with the Clintons. But I don't think
Dylan,
I can't even bring myself to say the words because it is just so much BS.
Dylan, as you take us through your soliloquy talking about his Mr. Epstein's intelligence connections, do you see an issue with a former president of the United States dropping his Secret Service detail to fly on a plane with a pedophile and with intelligence contacts? Do you find a problem with that?
Absolutely.
So at some level, and you're in agreement. You are in agreement with me that he has lied about a number of times he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane.
I believe he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane far more times than he has admitted to. And I think ditching a Secret Service detail as a former president of the United States is not becoming of someone who still has an oath to that office.
Do you think, and this isn't a political question, this is more of a macro policy, I have had this feeling that the Democrats at some point had almost given up on this election and given Joe Biden up as a sacrificial lamb, and then they can take a run at it in 2024. The pandemic and the George Floyd protests have seemed to give them some gas on a fire, which has given him an unintended result that makes him look even more viable as he sits in his basement and on his front porch. But I have been feeling like these other forces, like the Obamaites and the Clintonites, are really behind running the apparatus. And I feel like they really screwed Bernie Sanders again. Do you think that institutionally the Clintons and the Obamas still have a big hand in what's happening with the DNC?
Well, I think institutionally the Democratic Party is better run than the GOP in terms of its operations. One only needs to look at the spread of information that organizations like Media Matters are able to achieve, which their unambiguous goal is to discredit the right. Now, as someone who doesn't have a dog in this fight, because clearly this is not a thick Staten Island accent, I am Australian and I cannot vote in this country, it's very interesting to observe just how partisan the media has become. And a lot of that is fueled by the institutions of the Democratic Party and the GOP. I believe we actually can see former President Barack Obama throwing his support behind Joe Biden, which is significant. Now, I kind of don't want to raise this, but I will. Kanye West, him entering the race to be the next president of the United States is nothing short of a bad song and a bad joke. But think about the consequences of what that might well be. If he takes away a key category of voting, blacks, from Biden, then Trump is almost certain, if his base rallies behind him, to
win.
Be poised. Yeah.
Yep. And I want to, before we end, I want to see you take a crack at a thick Staten Island accent. But I can tell you with 100% factual certainty that operatives around the Trump campaign had a hand in helping Jill Stein gain ballot access in all 50 states. And many people believe that that was a slick piece of political trickery to pull some women votes away from Hillary. And I know that for certain. I can tell you I was in the room when it was discussed and then put into action. I feel like this is another trick just like that to get Kanye out there, get him on as many states as possible where he can still get on. There are some states where you just pay a fee and you're on. And every one of those black votes turns out to be not for Joe Biden, and that slim margin could be the win. In our final minute here, if you could, even if you want to try a New York accent, could you see the Trump campaign being behind this, Kanye?
I won't embarrass myself or upset your viewers by trying to put on an American accent, let alone a Staten Island accent. Look, I don't have any idea whether Kanye West is behind, the Trump campaign is behind Kanye West's nomination, if you like, to run for the presidency. But if it is a legitimate run, and we still don't know if it is a legitimate run, it does have the potential to fracture the vote, as we've seen in past elections.
Got it.
When George W. Bush should have been elected if there was not an independent that not George W. Bush.
All right, we gotta leave it there. Dylan Howard's one of the best in the business, and I thank you, my brother, for joining us. Appreciate you taking a little fun jabbing from me. You the man. We'll have you back soon, hopefully.
Good to talk to you, John. Have a great day.
You stay right there. We're going to come back across the top of the hour. All right, welcome back. We are just past the top of the hour of 1 here in New York on the Eastern Time, and it is a wonderful Woman Wednesday today. We have quite the show coming up for you. Joe Pignon is one of our money guests, and when we get the money guests, we got to slip them in, even if it's Women Wednesday. But Joe's quite the alpha male, and he will be lighting it up here with the full story of these statues being torn down in hour 2. Now, as I had mentioned in yesterday's broadcast, which many of you thankfully tuned into, the whole Black Lives Matter movement is based on a set of principles, which one of the key elements is removing the patriarch from the home, patriarch being the male, alpha male dad figure, and the breaking down of the nuclear family, because that's the way they take away people's individualism. They're admitted Marxists, as we all know, and I covered this quite comprehensively yesterday. And today, I want to talk to you about another enemy of democracy. We've all heard about this newfangled group called the Squad, and the Squad is Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. Now, many have said that Ilhan Omar married her own brother to get into the U.S., and now she happens to be in our Congress. And someone who is illegally in the U.S. by many accounts and sits in a position of power in our Congress has now decided that defund the police is just not enough. And their true colors are starting to show. Here is a tweet yesterday from Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar, and she is calling for no, not defund the police, dismantling of the U.S. economy and political systems, as she is seen there, adorned in her black purple burqa. And Ilhan Omar continues to be quite the character on the national stage. I reported extensively upon her when Representative Peter King from here in New York retired. Rather than taking the high road, she said, Peter King, good riddance. This man has given over 30 years of service to the United States of America. And he was quite the great man, and I wish him the best. And Ilhan Omar should be sent back to some place where she does not control any power whatsoever, nor have a platform for her evil and horrible America-hating views. I think she belongs in a country where you're not allowed to marry your brother. But we will take a quick break right now, and we will come back with one of the best commentators you're ever going to see right here on Liquid Lunch with Joe Pignon right after this. Just past the top of the hour of 1 here in New York, and here now the news. Yes, I usually have a deep Staten Island, New York accent, but being that I am under consideration by a number of networks to be a correspondent, they are questioning my ability to be a regular straight-up reporter. So I am doing today's show in a alter ego character that is a regular newsman, just to show my depth and breadth of my abilities. For your Dow Jones Industrial Average report, the Dow is up 45 points as we come through hour 2 here, and Bitcoin remains to be in quite stable territory at 9,300. Quite stable and even unstable it will be when we're joined by this guy, because he will light the candle as a little tip of the cap to 4th of July, which is past. Joe Pignon joins us now, and Joe's been with us from day one. He's a Republican strategist, philanthropist, and business leader, and might I say, to quote a famous philosopher, he's not a businessman, he's a businessman. Joe, thank you.
Good to meet you, man. How are you?
He goes, good to meet you. Joe, I'm playing around today with my alter ego character because people think I can only be, funny John, but It's not funny what's going on here. I was going berserko yesterday because, I don't understand the whole Christopher Columbus thing. And I said, Nico, you got to get me Joe Pignon. He's got to break this down. And the woke crowd, it just, I broke down BLM yesterday. They're founded on things like destroying our history, destroying our statues, changing street names. And now, they're going after tenets of the America, like the guy, right down to the guy who found the joint. What's going on with these statues, Joe?
I mean, look, this is what I've come to call as, kind of comfort food for the masses, plastic surgery for racial reciprocity. The hard truth is that people need to not be concerned about the name on the street sign. They need to be concerned about the fact that we've got children getting murdered in the streets. So when you talk about the fact that in New York City, with 100% of the people that were murdered in the month of June were minorities. When you talk about the fact that the homicide rate year over last is up 27%. You look in places like Chicago, where in the last month alone, homicide year over last is up 83%. People are dying. So this notion that somehow we are going to rectify all that ails America by tearing down statues, by changing the face on pancake syrup, by being gone with the wind, really shows how much that people who want to sleep well at night don't understand what keeps people of color up at night, which is making sure that they can feel safe in their own homes and that their children can be free to play in the streets in the summertime without ending up with a bullet in their head like the 3-year-old just did a week ago.
Joe, I want to read you a quote, and this is something that I've nary heard reported. A former U.S. president, who does not have any of his statues being torn down, uttered these words: "These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and it's a problem for us. They've got something now they never had before, political pull. Now we've got to do something about this, to give them a little something, but just enough to quiet them down and not enough to make a difference. If we don't move at all, they will line up against us, and there'll be no way of stopping them, and there'll be no way of putting a brake on all sorts of legislation. It will be Reconstruction all over again." You know who that was?
LBJ, baby, all the way.
That's right, LBJ, all the way. Have you heard of any LBJ statues being ripped down?
Well, look, here's the reality. They like to cherry pick the racial antipathy of the people that have the right letter next to their name on their voter registration cards, and they like to play up racism that doesn't exist on the people registered to parties that they do not like. So at the end of the day, what we're really talking about, I think if you go back to what is in vogue now, people talking about Dr. Martin Luther King saying that the greatest stumbling block for black people was the white moderate. And yet they also forget, conveniently, that it was Malcolm X himself that said that the greatest threat to the American Negro was the white liberal, who basically tried to trick black people into thinking that they actually cared about them. And so I think that the truth for progress in America lies somewhere in between. Individuals who are so obsessed with the status quo that they will turn a blind eye to injustice, but also crazy, hell-bent liberals who don't seem to understand that the things that they obsess about have very little to do with improving things for black people and everything to do with making sure that they can actually feel as if they have availed themselves of what's available to them, to not have to deal with whatever white guilt or white paranoia or whatever in vogue phrase, white fragility, that they've invented on this particular day.
I want to go a little further on LBJ. Famed presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin points out that there were often instances of casual racism by LBJ that are not easily rationalized. And in a conversation in one of her books, she quoted a story about a driver of LBJ who asked to not be called boy, the N-word, or chief. And LBJ's response was, as long as you're black, and you're going to be black till the day you die, no one's going to call you by your god-darn name. So no matter what you're called, N-word, just let it roll off your back like water and you'll make it through. Just pretend you're a god-darn piece of furniture. But they're after Columbus for coming over in the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria. I don't get it.
Look, again, we like to pick and choose what offends us. As I've often said, if you've got to run to Wikipedia in the middle of a protest to try to figure out whether you should or should not be offended, then probably you're barking up the wrong tree. So I think that what we need to be talking about is the fact that we have black and brown youth trapped in schools that don't actually serve them. We've got more and more black people going to college, and more black people in those colleges having to take remedial courses because they haven't learned the basic fundamental skills that they were supposed to have learned in high school for free. So we have a public school education system that is not working for black people. We have a job market where we've seen wages for black people go up underneath President Trump. And at the same time, we've actually seen the buying power for black people decrease precipitously over the last 30 years. So those are the things that we need to be focused on if your true aim is to actually improve outcomes for black people. But what we often find is that the fight for black people often gets co-opted by liberals who simply want to have their own agenda and make themselves feel better about doing what they were actually going to do in their own interest anyway.
Joe, I want to ask you a few quizzical questions. Are statues what's holding back progress for black America?
I mean, look, I don't think that the epitaph on any man's actual tombstone has read, "Here lies a man who couldn't make it through life because of the statue standing in front of him." The obstacles to progress for black people are education. The obstacles for black people are access to opportunity. The obstacles for black people are the ability to be able to be judged, as Martin Luther King said, by the content of their character. Those are the things that black people everywhere want to see happen. What we have people reaching out to is to try to, again, make themselves feel better about the place we find ourselves in, which is a world where a man named George Floyd could lose his life to a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds over a fake $20 bill. This notion that somehow that we have not made it as far as we would like to think we have made it sometimes. So that pain is real, that anger is real, and the manifestation of that can be lashing out at these physical objects. But I think the object lesson needs to be that if we don't focus on the substance of change, if we actually get stuck with the symbols of racism's past, then we're never going to arrive at the future that we all deserve, and we're never going to arrive at the outcomes that black people have been crying out for generations.
Yeah, I tend to feel like, there's these old, there's contradictory sayings. You got to learn from your past, and then there's other sayings that say history repeats itself. It's probably somewhere in between those two. But to me, I'm not for Christopher Columbus having indigenous people enslaved or anything like that. But these historical norms at the time are what we need to be pointing to and learning from and getting our society to a better place instead of trying to erase it like some Marxist manifesto.
I mean, look, the fact of the matter is the same people who are crying out to say that there hasn't been justice for Breonna Taylor, a woman who lost her life because of an extraordinary no-knock warrant raid. They don't seem to realize that we can't have that conversation if you want to obsess about Uncle Ben's rice. We can't have that conversation if you want to sit here and say that somehow we should weigh the pros and cons of tearing down the statues of a man named Abraham Lincoln who literally signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When that is your focus, then most assuredly what gets lost in the wash is the fight for reforms in policing, reforms in criminal justice, reforms in education, reforms in the things that we know are required to make sure that they can achieve the outcomes that all people want. Yep. So that is the kind of paradigm that we're living in, where people don't seem to understand how to leverage power because they've been disempowered for so long, and those who are filling the void do not have the best interests of people of color at heart.
All right, we got to leave it there, Joey. Thank you so much, brother. You're always great. And Joe Pignon has been with us since day one, and I appreciate your friendship, pal. See you soon.
Good to see you, bud. Talk soon.
See you, Joe. Quick break and more liquid lunch for you right after.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, welcome back. I don't know who that other guy was sitting in for me over there, but going with this whole news reporter type thing. Anyway, he's out. I'm going to be playing him this afternoon in golf. It's going to be me versus the newsman. I'm going to play with both my bipolar personalities. But no, hey, look, every week we try to bring you the best guests. I always say the guests that know where the rubber meets the road, the people that make things happen, not like these talking heads you see on other channels who their whole living is being made, getting paid to go on television and say whatever the network says. We bring you real people on this show. The real deal with the market is, as I mentioned earlier, it closed under 26,000 yesterday. It's at 25,888 now. I don't like it in the 25s. It could trapdoor to 24,000. Then 22,000, but we're keeping our eye close on that. I think Bitcoin is enjoying quite the nice day today and nice week. It's at 9,400, so things are happening if you've been taking our advice and looking into educating yourself on the whole crypto and big data economy. And every week I bring on one of my good buddies, and he's here for us to give you some insights on what's going on, talk to you about your IRA, passive income, and special treats that we may see in the market. But last week when Joe Hagan was here, he's been talking about this company, Datadog, symbol DDOG, David Oscar George? Yeah, George, DDOG. Joe's been talking about this since October on Liquid Lunch. And last week I tried to press him, all right, Joe, enough with the Datadog. What else is good out there? And he said, you know what? I would stick with Datadog. Take a look at this. Aside from being a great friend of the show and, you know, joining me and others as big shareholders in InvestView, you're quite the stock picker, too. And going all the way back to October, you've been talking about Datadog, DDOG is the symbol, and this thing doesn't want to give up. In our final minute here, tell us a little bit of Datadog and if you got any new picks that people could take a look at.
You know what? Every time I look at something new, if I want to trade something in the market, I just default back to Datadog. It's in the same category as Zoom, and what's happened in this whole coronavirus and this whole, you know, needing to be, you know, really agile with your data and agile with your company, working from home, etc. And Datadog is one of the top few stocks that have performed. And we're not talking about coronavirus retracement. We're talking about new highs consistently. I talked about it 2 weeks ago on your show. It was 75. Yesterday, it almost hit 95. It hit 93. It's still around 90. It's a $27 billion valuation, and I think it's going to be worth at least $50 billion. So I think there's a lot of upside left in that stock.
Wow. Okay.
And that is validation for what we're doing at InvestView,
no doubt,
SafeTech, and our Apex.
There you have it. A lot of business networks, they don't show you their experts' calls because they're mostly wrong, so they don't get into the practice of that. Here we do, and when I'm off, I tell you, and if Joe was off, he'd say, hey, I made a miscalculation. But Joe Hagan joins us right now, the man, the myth, the legend at this point. Datadog at all-time highs again, Joe. And last week I tried to give you an out clause and say, give me another name. And you said, nope, I'm sticking with Datadog. You were right on the money. What's happening here?
I'm still sticking with the dog. I mean, we're in the big data economy. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. My only, apples to apples comparison could be, in the beginning of the whole, iPhone, to Apple. I think the stock could be a couple of hundred, by the end of 21. And it's got a lot of upside. So in the month of June, I think they reported they have 2 new customers, Amazon Web Services and the U.S. government. Think about that for a second. So demand continues to grow in their pipeline. The need for being agile with your data as a company grows more urgent in this economy. And not only do I think that bodes well for the dog, if you will, but companies like Apex, the division of InvestView, that have this type of outsourced, product and portfolio to offer their clients. I think they have a lot of upside for the next year or two to come, if not longer.
So, Joe, thanks for that. And, I'm serious. I've been doing CNBC and Fox News and Fox Business, and I used to make call after call. and I would say, hey, next time I come on, let the people know that I told them that Fannie Mae was going to go from $10 to $1 when I said short it. But the networks, they don't like to get in the practice of showing people's calls, because most of the people on TV talking about stocks are paid to talk about stocks. They don't really know anything. So they don't do that. And I used to, get really mad about it. So I'm glad that you were right, and I'm glad that we can show this stuff. But I have been talking about Bitcoin. You and I, have been talking about Apex and the great Apex model and the passive income. I know Apex is going through some really good changes right now, and it's being institutionalized. But talk to us a little bit about this Bitcoin economy, because I think, the longer I see Bitcoin between 9 and 10,000, I feel like from a technical standpoint, that's building like some tremendous support at these levels. What's your outlooks on Bitcoin itself as an asset?
Yeah, I think much like the dog, I think, within the next 12 months, somewhere in 2020 to 2021, you'll see new highs. If it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer, but, they did it, the halving, they're doing the opposite of what the U.S. dollar and other governments do as far as the supply, right? So they make it tougher to mine, yet it is gaining more and more momentum. It hasn't even touched, really scratched the surface, really as an asset class in managed money accounts for the average retail investor. And I think when that happens, all bets are off, and it has a lot of upside. But, we're spoiled Americans, and counterparts over in the UK say, we don't look at Bitcoin with as much urgency as people in a lot of countries, hundreds of countries, that, fear waking up one morning and seeing that their currency move 4 decimal points, like when it's Venezuela or from these other countries. So there is, regardless of the U.S., there is a global demand, an insatiable demand to own Bitcoin rather than one of these currencies. And at the end of the day, that only helps the long-term outlook tremendously.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like, everyone was all nervous about this halving event back in May, where they cut the bounty to certify transactions in half, which actually, to me, acts like a proxy buyback, because they're now creating less Bitcoin. And I think that's showing, and what's happened is there's been a lot of instability and volatility in the markets. I happen to think there's too much artificial insemination in the markets right now for common stocks. I mean, there's one-off winners like the Datadog that you pointed out, but I feel like the macros, it's got to clean out some of this crap. In our final minute, anything else you're looking at, or any thoughts on where the market goes from here?
So yeah, I think, one last thought on Bitcoin. I mean, you talk about the market finds a wall of worry. I think certainly Bitcoin, when you look at the miners, even though it has solidified, have the one report I read, they've been depositing less. So less of the Bitcoin has actually been hitting, accounts, right? So they're holding on to that for a reason. Nothing excites me. There's too much geopolitical, especially, domestically, unrest. I'm sticking with the dog. I'm sticking with my big data platform that we have with Apex. In full disclosure, I'm a large shareholder of InvestU, as you are.
Yep.
I love that little stock at 3 cents. And in terms of big data and Bitcoin, the future is really bright, right? You got to wear shades.
Joe going with the props now. All right, Joe, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much. We'll check in with you next week. That's Joe Hagan, CEO of Wealth Colony, and we'll take a quick break. Come back right after this with CJ Pearson, president of Last Hope USA.
Hello, everybody. This is President Donald Trump. I don't smoke and I don't drink, but there's a fantastic show called Liquid Lunch, and their sponsor is Question Tequila, and it's hosted by John Tobacco. Booze, cigarettes, tobacco, it's all here with great insight on politics, culture, and everything else. Tune in every day to Liquid Lunch.
You're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I am John Cronkite Tobacco, Here now, the news. Lots going on with the markets today. Your portfolio seems to be doing fine, as well as Bitcoin is on quite the rise today. We'll keep you updated on all that as we get through the hour. But right now, a new guest joins us who's not been with us before. It's CJ Pearson, GOP strategist and president of Last Hope USA. CJ, what's happening, brother? How are you? Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I did a little research on you. I know you're doing some great things, and Last Hope USA is a great organization. I have to tell you that your message is tremendous, but now that I see you in person, I feel like you're 10. You look like quite the young man.
17, almost 18. 3 more weeks. Give me 3 more weeks. I'll be 18.
There you go, kid. All right, good. So I was positing earlier in the show that the Trump campaign may or may not have had a hand in getting Jill Stein on the ballot, which eliminated some women voters for Hillary. And I think Kanye West is coordinating with President Trump here to possibly take away some African-American votes. What's your take on this?
You know, I completely agree with that sentiment. I think if Kanye West does indeed decide to run, he did an interview earlier today, kind of making it seem as if he is, the candidate he really poses the biggest threat to is not President Trump, but it's Joe Biden,
right.
Not only in terms of African-American support, but also youth support. You know, when I talk to my peers, I have not seen a more unenthusiastic reaction from them towards any liberal candidate since I've been involved in politics. Hillary Clinton, you know, a lot of them didn't like her, but they still, you know, were captivated about the history that she could have made. But Joe Biden excites no one. I don't even think he excites himself from what I've seen. So really, Kanye West is an absolutely fatal blow to the Joe Biden campaign if he does indeed decide to run.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that Biden has any chance if Kanye's in the race? I'm sorry, there's a fire on my desk, and I'm trying to put it out with my bottle of water as we're in this interview. But my apologies for being distracted. I think this potentially, and we know that Kanye and Kim Kardashian were a big part of, you know, encouraging Donald Trump to pass the First Step Act, which reversed the horrible ills of the 1994 crime bill, which, by the way, Joe Biden bragged about being the author of, which unfairly, and if you ask me, profiled a lot of minority and African-American people and threw them in jail for significant amounts of time for small drug crimes. I think that Kanye is, you know, promoting himself. Obviously, he's a mega promoter. But I also think there is some value in young folks and maybe African-American folks who are not buying this crap, because Joe Biden had the nerve to say with Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club that if you're thinking about voting for Donald Trump, then you ain't black. Let me ask you this, CJ. Are you thinking about voting for Donald Trump?
I am 100% voting for Donald Trump in November. I look forward to casting my first vote for him. And the point you made about Joe Biden's comments on the Breakfast Club saying that you ain't black if you don't support him, I cannot wait to see him on a debate stage with Kanye West telling Kanye West that he is not black. Now, that will certainly be a sight to see, but it really just speaks to the entitlement that liberals feel as if they have to the black vote. They don't feel as if they have to earn it. They don't feel as if they have to actually do anything for black America. They just feel as if they are entitled to it. It's the deepest type of racism I've ever seen. The fact that they think that they just own black people to the extent that we don't even apparently have the right to think for ourselves politically. We have to allow the color of our skin to dictate our politics in their eyes. And I've got to tell you that there are many people who are sick and tired of that type of entitlement from the left.
So let me ask you this. You did say you intend 100% on voting for Donald Trump. Are you black?
I am black.
You are black. So Joe Biden's premise is quite off the mark, isn't it? And when I heard that, I was talking a little earlier in the show about, you know, how they're ripping down statues of Christopher Columbus and Teddy Roosevelt. You know, these are, you know, parts of our history. I mean, Christopher Columbus, he may have engaged in some of the norms of the time, but he kind of found the place. So, I mean, you know, there's something to be said for telling generations of people, here is the explorer who found our country, and he also did some bad things, okay? But Lyndon B. Johnson is widely quoted, including Doris Kearns Goodwin, a well-respected presidential historian, as using the N-word casually all the time, and went so far in private conversation as saying we got to do this, Civil Rights Act because we'll have N-words voting for us for another 200 years. Why aren't they ripping down Lyndon Johnson statues?
Because he's the architect of the modern day Democrat Party. His great society is the basis of so much of the dependency and entitlement programs that liberals have long pushed for the last decade or so. They can't ban him. They can't cancel him, because if they do that, they're going to have to cancel themselves. But honestly, why not? The Democrat Party has been founded upon the bedrock of racism since its founding. They were founded to defend the institution of slavery. They fought an entire war to preserve it. And so it's so interesting to me when you see all these statues coming down and you start to connect the dots and you just realize, aren't these people all Democrats? So if Democrats are really remaking history and want to tear down every racist artifact of American history, I think they should start with their own party, considering they literally were founded to preserve racist artifacts like the institution of slavery. So I look forward to them doing a little bit of a self-awareness in the future, but I doubt that will come. But one could only hope.
So there's some new news breaking today that Kanye, in an interview with Forbes, announced that he would run under the banner of the birthday party. And the reasoning is because when he wins, it's everyone's birthday, he says. You got to love this guy. And his campaign slogan is a leaner version of Barack Obama's Yes, We Can, reading simply yes. I think this is, the song Runaway that he had? You know how it goes? Let's hear it for the D-bags. Let's hear it for the A-holes. I think he's kind of sticking it. You got to check out that song. It's a great song. But I think he's really sticking it to the D-bags in the Democrat Party and saying, hey, Trump did the right thing by us, and if I can help him by prying away some African-American votes from Joe Biden, I'm going to do it. And
I agree, and he's doing it his own way. And I think, I'm a huge Kanye fan. I love Kanye West, and I think he's such a creative genius in so many ways. And I think anyone who really sees what's going on here knows that he is supporting the president in his own way. And I'm 100% supportive of that. He should run. I think Joe Biden is the only person sweating a Kanye West candidacy, and he rightfully should be. If Kanye West runs, like I said, he's done.
All right, well, CJ, Liquid Lunch, we usually have a cocktail here and there. You're underage, so I can't offer you a drink, but I can offer you this.
3 years.
I can offer you this. We need you back as many times as you can join us, because you got a great perspective and you're quite the young man, and I appreciate your efforts today. That's CJ Pearson. He is the president of Last Hope USA, and you will see more of him here on Liquid Lunch, but we won't let him drink. We'll take a quick break here and come back and wrap up the news with the booze right after this.
For more Liquid Lunch, head over to YouTube, do a search for Liquid Lunch TV, and hit that subscribe button.
Well, looky here. Is that you? It is you. Hello there, you. You're there, I'm here. And John Tobacco has departed the studios to head to his son's baseball game. I am his alter ego, John Cronkite, and I'm here to correct the compendium of mistakes that John engaged in during today's show. Certainly, John was railing against Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. And I believe my colleague, Mr. Tobacco, who tends to not be so careful with the facts, Mr. Tobacco noted that Ilhan Omar was wearing a burqa, when in fact she was pictured with a purple scarf over her head. And the proper term for all of our friends in the Muslim audience and those who are observing of Islam, that is a hijab, not a burqa. And Mr. Tobacco was dead wrong on that one. Dead wrong as well when he called one of his guests, Mr. Dylan Howard, quite the fine investigative reporter. He called him out on the Clinton cartel killing Jeffrey Epstein, and there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the Clintons had anything to do with the death of Jeffrey Epstein, although I do not believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and I do agree with Mr. Tobacco on that. He's still alive. I am having quite the good time today. I typically report the news quite straight. I'm a liberal. I have a stick up my butt. And John Tobacco left this here, a martini, which is quite egregious when it comes to news reporting. We cannot show ourselves to be under the influence because then we can't be objective. But in any event, I will slug it down. Ooh, it's quite delicious. Now I can understand why he drinks during the show. And, oh, now that I've drank it, I think John is back. Oh, hey, how are you? All right, anyway, I'm playing around all day today because I'm mocking some news executives who think that I'm just not, I can't play it straight. I have to be wacky John all the time. But meantime, most of my audience, and I'm getting hit up all over today, Facebook, people are texting me saying, get rid of John Cronkite and bring back John Tobacco. So, do you know the song from Kanye, Nico, that I was referring to, Runaway? You don't know it.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know you're full of 90s rap references, so I assume.
I am. And, I used one of my favorite terms on Joe Pignon before, but, Jay-Z's line, even though I can't stand Jay-Z anymore, the line, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, is one of my favorites.
Classics, yeah.
It is. It's one of my favorites. Runaway Kanye. And if you never heard this song, because it wasn't a big song, but if you hear it, you're gonna die laughing. Let me see if I could play it. This is Kanye's anthem to the left wing. Okay. What is Jess saying over there, Jess?
Careful of profanity. That's what Jess is saying.
Yeah. I don't think there's any profanity in this particular song. I'm gonna just play it in the background. But this is I think this is gonna be like his campaign song when he comes out on the stage. Let's see. This is Kanye West in one of his lesser-known songs called Runaway.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Nice.
Run away fast as you can.
I remember that song. Yep. You think this is going to be his campaign song?
I think it's going to be, if you don't know the song, the main verse is, let's hear it for the Massengills. It's like, he's referring to people as D-bags, which is kind of funny. And I think, we're seeing more and more every day that the left-wing media is a real big pack of D-bags. And, one of my favorite Ds is Donnie Deutsch. I want to say it just a little different than that, but I can't because I'll get in trouble. But Scott Miller, our CEO, is on vacation, so if I did slip in a dirty word, he probably would flip out on me. But he's resting comfortably on a beach somewhere, and he's given me a tremendous opportunity here, so I don't want to screw with it. But Kanye, if you ask me. And I have been as I've mentioned many times, I'm a political disciple of Roger Stone's theory that one man's Roger Stone believes that political discourse is good in any way, and bad press is no better than no press. And one of Roger's famous lines is, it's better if they're talking bad about you than if they're not talking about you at all. And this wax smells of a great Stone-like piece of trickery to put a pop culture icon, Kanye West, on the ballot in as many states as possible. And hopefully young people who are behind the Bernie Sanders movement, who want to protest vote, they'll vote for Kanye. And African-American people who understand what's happening, and they're like, well, I don't want to get shamed in my community and say I voted for Trump, so I'll vote for Kanye. And the vote for Kanye is like 2 votes for Trump. Because what the establishment like Barack Obama and the Clintonistas and the Clinton cartel and all the institutionalists, the pedophile podestas, what all of them want is they want all black people to be so scared of Donald Trump that they vote for Joe Biden, or at least they don't vote for anyone. So getting them out and a vote for Kanye is a vote that they didn't expect to go to Kanye. They hoped it went to them, or I hoped it went to no one, but it's actually a minus and a plus, which is big. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. I hope the booze was brought to you well. I want to thank Jess for doing a great job on the Switch today, and I want to thank Nico for doing absolutely nothing today. And we will join you tomorrow at the same bat time and the same bat channel for more news. I'm John Cronkite.
Welcome back, folks.
I've been taking my makeup off every day with the coronavirus wipes. I'm still corona free.
Didn't even wipe your fake tan off.
Well, that's because that's not a fake tan. That's a real thing.
This November. And Democrats don't want to see it, at least establishment ones. It seems like they're trying to sort of
Against weed, but for them.